You're walking through a mall after hours. It's quiet. The ambient music has been turned off. You pass a department store window and catch a glimpse of a mannequin out of the corner of your eye. For a split second, your heart stops. Your breathing hitches. Your brain dumps a microdose of adrenaline directly into your bloodstream and screams at you. Threat. Why? Why does a plastic shell shaped like a person trigger a deeply buried panic response? You know it's plastic. You know it's a mannequin. But for 13 milliseconds, which is exactly how long it takes your brain to process a human face, you were absolutely convinced that you were in danger. Because 300,000 years ago, something looked exactly like us, but wasn't. This is the story of the Uncanny Valley, not the robotics theory, not the reason why early 2000s CGI movies make you feel slightly nauseous. We are talking about the evolutionary biology of why you are terrified of the almost human.
And why that terror implies something genuinely horrific about our prehistoric past. Because here is the thing nobody tells you about fear. Evolution does not waste energy on being scared of things that don't exist. Let's start with the brain. Your brain is a hyper-optimized, calorie-burning supercomputer. And it has a dedicated piece of hardware right near the visual cortex called the fusiform face area. Its entire job, its only purpose, is to recognize faces. It is so sensitive, so aggressively tuned that you hallucinate faces where there are none. You see faces in clouds. You see faces in the foam of your coffee. You see faces in the front grille of a car. Your brain is desperately, constantly scanning the environment for other humans. Because for most of human history, other humans were the most important variables in your survival. But there is a glitch in this software. In 1970, a Japanese robotics professor named Masahiro Mori noticed something strange. If you build a robot that looks like a box, people think it's cute. Think WALL-E. If you make it look a little more human, give it arms, a head, maybe some LED eyes, people like it more. The empathy goes up. But if you make it look 95% human, if you give it synthetic skin and glass eyes and teeth, but its movements are just slightly robotic, or its facial expressions are just a fraction of a second too slow, empathy doesn't just drop. It plummets into a subterranean trench of absolute revulsion. Mori called this trench the Uncanny Valley. When you look at something in the Uncanny Valley, your brain does a violent cognitive misfire. The fusiform face area lights up and says, "Human, friend, approach." But simultaneously, your amygdala, the primitive fear center of your brain, slams the emergency brake and screams, "Wrong, dead, predator, run." You are trapped in a biological paradox. You are looking at something that triggers your deepest social instincts and your most primal survival terror at the exact same time. And this brings us to the uncomfortable question. Fear is expensive. Anxiety burns calories. Adrenaline damages tissue over time. Evolution ruthlessly deletes biological mechanisms that don't serve a survival purpose. You are afraid of spiders because venom kills you. You are afraid of heights because gravity kills you. You are afraid of the dark because predators hunt in the dark. So what taught us to be afraid of the almost human? What was the evolutionary pressure that hardwired a sense of visceral, skin-crawling dread into our DNA whenever we see a face that is slightly off?
The standard biological answer, the one you'll find in an entry-level psychology textbook, is the pathogen theory. The idea goes like this. Early humans needed a way to avoid disease. Before we had germ theory, before we had microscopes or antibiotics, we needed a visual cue to stay away from sickness. A corpse looks human, but it doesn't move. It smells wrong. A person with late-stage rabies or leprosy or a severe neurological disease looks human, but their facial muscles droop. Their movements are jerky. Their eyes are vacant. The theory argues that the Uncanny Valley is just an ancient quarantine protocol. Your brain sees a face that is moving incorrectly, assumes it is carrying a fatal pathogen, and triggers a disgust response to keep you from walking over and catching the plague. It's a solid theory. It makes logical sense, but it doesn't explain the eyes. Disgust makes you back away. Disgust makes you cover your mouth. But the Uncanny Valley doesn't just trigger disgust. It triggers the feeling of being hunted. When you see an animatronic face staring at you from the dark, you don't feel like you're going to catch a cold. You feel like you are going to die.
You feel the exact same predatory anxiety that a gazelle feels when the tall grass stops moving. Pathogens don't look at you. Diseases don't stalk you. So if the Uncanny Valley was just about avoiding sick people, why does it feel like a predator response? Let's go back, way back. We're going to 300,000 BCE. When we think about ancient history, we suffer from an extreme case of single-child syndrome. We look around the planet today and we are the only humans here. Homo sapiens. We are so utterly alone at the top of the cognitive food chain that we have to invent fictional aliens just to have someone to talk to in movies. We assume it has always been this way. We assume we walked out of the primordial soup, grabbed a spear, and reigned supreme. That is completely, catastrophically false. For the vast majority of our existence, the Earth was essentially the closest thing to a high fantasy novel you can possibly imagine. We were not alone. We were not the only humans. The Pleistocene epoch was a crowded, dangerous, and incredibly weird place.
If you went for a walk across Eurasia 100,000 years ago, you wouldn't just find animals. You would find entirely different species of humans. If you went to Europe, you would find the Neanderthals. They were shorter than us, vastly more muscular, with heavy brow ridges, no chins, and brains that were actually larger than ours. They wore clothes, they hunted mammoths, they buried their dead. If you went to Siberia, you would find the Denisovans, a mysterious sister species that we know almost nothing about, except that they had massive teeth and shared the landscape with us for tens of thousands of years. If you went to the island of Flores in Indonesia, you would find Homo floreziensis, literally hobbits, a distinct species of human adults who stood 3.5 feet tall, hunted pygmy elephants, and lived on isolated islands. If you went to South Africa, you might bump into Homo naledi, a creature with a brain the size of an orange, curved fingers for climbing trees, but feet perfectly adapted for walking upright, who deliberately disposed of their dead in deep, pitch-black cave systems. Earth was covered in hominids, and they all looked almost human. Now, I want you to really picture this, not abstractly. Put yourself in the dirt. You are a Homo sapiens. It is 50,000 years ago. You are foraging in a dense forest in the Levant. The sun is going down. The shadows are getting long. You hear a twig snap. You turn around. Standing in the brush, 20 feet away, is a figure. It stands on 2 legs. It is holding a spear. It is wearing animal skins. The silhouette is entirely human. Your fusiform face area lights up. Friend, tribe, human. But then it steps into the light. The brow is too heavy. The jaw protrudes too far. The eyes are set just a little too deep. It breathes differently. It moves with a heavy, terrifying biomechanical density that your brain recognizes is physically superior to you. It opens its mouth and vocalizes, but the pitch is wrong. The resonance is wrong. The sounds it makes do not map onto the human linguistic software installed in your brain. It is 95% human, and it is looking right at you. Your brain completely short circuits. Is it a person? Do you trade with it? Do you greet it? Or is it an animal? Do you throw your spear? Do you run? If you guess wrong, you die. If you treat it like a human and it views you as prey or a territorial threat, you die. If you treat it like an animal and it has a tribe of 30 heavily armed tool users sitting right behind the tree line, you die. This was not a rare occurrence. For tens of thousands of years, Homo sapiens lived in direct, physical, overlapping proximity with other species of humans. We shared valleys. We hunted the same herds. We drank from the same rivers. And we fought over the same caves. And this is where the Uncanny Valley stops being a quirky psychological glitch and becomes a grim historical artifact. Because we know exactly what happened when Homo sapiens encountered the almost human. We killed them. The history of our species expanding out of Africa is essentially the history of an ecological weapon of mass destruction. Everywhere Homo sapiens went, massive megafauna went extinct. And everywhere Homo sapiens went, the other humans disappeared. We didn't just outcompete the Neanderthals. We didn't just politely gather more berries than the Denisovans until they starved. The archaeological record is painted in violence.
We have found Neanderthal ribs pierced by lightweight throwing spears, weapons that Neanderthals did not use, but Homo sapiens did. We have found fossilized evidence of brutal, sustained territorial conflict. We were the apex predators of the Pleistocene. But more specifically, we were the apex predators of other hominids. When you see something in the Uncanny Valley, when you look at a humanoid shape that moves just slightly wrong, your brain isn't just warning you about a disease, it is warning you about a rival. It is triggering a 100,000-year-old defense mechanism from a time when the most dangerous thing in the dark wasn't a lion and wasn't a wolf. It was another type of human carrying a weapon
Who wanted the exact same resources you did. The Uncanny Valley is an evolutionary combat reflex. And here is the psychological toll of that reality, the part that makes this genuinely tragic. Because we didn't just fight them, we interbred with them. Genetic testing has proven beyond any doubt that if you have European or Asian ancestry, roughly 1 to 2% of your DNA is Neanderthal. If you have Melanesian ancestry, you carry DNA from the Denisovans, which means the interactions between our ancestors and the almost humans weren't just violent, they were intimate, they were profoundly complex.
Imagine the sheer, staggering cognitive dissonance of looking at a being that triggers your deepest survival terror, your Uncanny Valley disgust response, and your reproductive drive simultaneously. Our ancestors lived in a world of fractured mirrors. Everywhere they looked, they saw distorted reflections of themselves. Some of those reflections they traded with, some they slept with, and the rest they exterminated. This is the invisible weight of human history. For millions of years, the family tree was a wildly branching bush of different bipedal apes trying to figure out how to survive. But for the last 30,000 years, we have been completely alone. We are the last ones left. We are the sole survivors of a multi-species war of attrition that we won so utterly, we forgot we even fought it. We forgot the Neanderthals. We forgot the hobbits. We forgot the Denisovans. We built cities and wrote books and laid fiber optic cables under the ocean and convinced ourselves that we have always been the solitary masters of the earth. But your DNA remembers. Your amygdala remembers. That sudden spike of irrational fear you get when you see an animatronic face, or a deepfake video, or a wax figure in a museum, that is not a glitch. That is an evolutionary scar. It is a biological echo from a time when the world was full of things that looked like us, but weren't. We wiped out every single other human species on this planet. We are the monsters that won the war.
And now, in our absolute suffocating loneliness, we spend billions of dollars building artificial intelligence and humanoid robots, desperately trying to recreate the exact same almost humans that we spent 100,000 years exterminating. We are biologically terrified of them, and yet we are obsessively compelled to build them, just to have some company in the dark. History isn't just in the dirt, it's in your nervous system.
Okay, I'm off now. I'm gonna go stare at my microwave until I have a panic attack. In the meantime, click on the next video, bro. Please, just click. See you soon.